Sorry, everybody. Welcome back, trainers. We're here. I'm Tyson, joined here by Choppa for more of our Collectors Emporium Mega Cup. We're here in our round 4. We took a little bit of an extended break, but we're going to get right into the game for you guys today. We're going to be featuring Philip Cohen and Luca Paz. This is going to be our matchup today. A battle of two Lunalas, it looks like, here in team preview. Super excited to get into this one. Luca Paz is a bit of a player who hasn't had a decent result in a while, but definitely has had accomplishments before. Philip Cohen, if you have been to the tri-state area, you know them pretty well. They're a really, really good local player as well, and has done pretty well at regionals. I'm pretty sure it's day 2 before, but both of these players have very, very cool teams. Two different kind of looks and versions of Lunala, which isn't unrestricted, I could say I have seen too much of.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting way to show how differently you can build a Pokemon. To talk about these Lunala sets a little bit more, Philip's team seems like it's kind of based on Bizad's Vancouver winning team. I think it has relatively similar sets, kind of defined by that Meteor Beam, but also that Trick Room and Expanding Force Lunala. But on Luca's side, it's going to be the Calm Mind, Moonblast, Moonguy's Beam set that Eric Rios kind of became infamous for using at the recent European Regional. It's a little bit hard to say which of these Lunalas is going to have the advantage. As a Pokemon that has a 4 times weakness to one of its own moves, I think how both of these players use the Terras on their Lunala is going to be a big deciding factor, figuring out whether something like the Fairy or the Water type is going to be better. Maybe we're going to have to think about how the partners play into the matchup as well. From the outside, it's really hard to say if either side really has a major advantage here. I think there's going to be benefits and drawbacks to either.
And like I said, we're going to jump right into today's game, guys. So Philip Cohen is going to be leading off with that Roaring Moon and the Lunala. And then on the opposing side for Luca Paz, we're going to have the Lunala and the Incineroar. And one thing I will say is I do think Luca actually does have a little bit, if I had to pick one, Lunala's on Luca's side has a little bit of a higher advantage because of the Calm Mind. You have more chances to get a +1 to your special attack compared to the +1 from Meteor Beam. That's one thing I would say, but again, because of all the partner Pokemon, it really is up in the air for both of these trainers. Luca hovering over something like that knockoff into the opposing Lunala is a bit risky, right? Because if Philip does just go for the Meteor Beam, what are you knocking off? The Meteor Beam has already gone off and the Power Herb is used.
Yeah, this seems like it could be such a volatile turn 1. We have these Lunas that are capable of doing incredible amounts of damage to each other with Moonguys. And then each of them also have a partner that is very susceptible to going down in one hit, whether that's Incineroar to 1 Meteor Beam or Roaring Moon to 1 Moonblast.
Yeah, and Moonblast is also another important thing here. Instead of something like that Meteor Beam, you actually get to run something like that Moonblast with a Lunala, which you don't get to with the Meteor Beam because you want something like the Trick Room as well. Think out going into the Roaring Moon, though, and Philip going for that Terrestrialization Water on their Lunala, just not letting Luca go for a potential Moonguy's Beam to potentially break that Shadow Shield and do a lot of damage to Philip's Lunala.
Wow, it is really bold of Luca to just leave that enemy Lunala wide open. Granted, I'm not sure if he would have been able to do too much to stop a Water-type attack from it here, or an attack from a Water-type Lunala. This Meteor Beam is coming out. It is not going to connect against the Incineroar. That is a huge opportunity that Lunala is missing, because now this and Incineroar fighting two Pokemon that has a pretty good type matchup against without, that kind of really powerful Rock-type move. Oh my gosh, Incin really dodged a bullet on that one.
And I think that's already put Luca in the lead there just because of not losing your Fake Outer and the fact that Philip can't go for another Meteor Beam now. Now it has to go for that resisted Moonguy's Beam into the Incineroar. What was also really notable as well as last turn with these Lunalas is Moonguy's Beam ignores abilities. So being able to ignore the Shadow Shield is very important there.
I don't think it ignores Shadow Shield particularly. I think,
really?
Yes, I think Shadow Shield kind of happens to ignore it. I guess Shadow Shield is just on a different priority tier. We see Roaring Moon going down to 1 Moonblast there and kind of missing its chance to set up anything like a Tailwind just with that. Ooh, yeah, that is some pretty chunky damage from the Moonguy's Beam just because both of these Lunalas, on Luca's side, we have the special defense boost from Calm Mind. On Philip's side, we very briefly had +1 special attack. Now we're back down to neutral after a parting shot. Another thing that I want to point out about that turn is now that we know that Luca has the faster Lunala, and with that Roaring Moon going down, the only way that Philip is going to be able to get that speed back in his favor is by thinking about something like a Trick Room.
Yeah, and that's really scary because I think missing that Meteor Beam on the Incineroar really kind of was what you didn't want to happen. Unfortunately, that's one of the things that have to accept when you are running a move like Meteor Beam or any inaccurate move in general, is that you can miss and it will miss eventually in tournament. Especially right now where it's so important to get rid of that fake out tool that Incineroar and the parting shots that kind of mitigates your Lunala's damage. Luca's going to be able to continue to do damage now with a +1 special defense and +1 special attack. You could even switch in something like the Rillaboom here to grant even more recovery on top of your leftovers Lunala.
Yes, I think Rillaboom is really the perfect switch in to kind of like disable this Indeedee board to threaten the enemy water type Lunala. I think if it wasn't for the Rillaboom, Phillips' double Psychic types in Psychic Trade was actually looking pretty good for him. However, it looks like Phillip is actually going on the offensive with a Moongeist Beam. I think that's pointed at Rillaboom, and we're about to see what Indeedee wants to go for this turn. Perhaps a Luring Voice. No trick room needed.
I think a Luring Voice there was assuming the Ogerpon stayed in. I was probably potentially trying to get a knockout onto it, realizing that Follow Me could be very dangerous later in the game when Lunala gets more setups. But this is even more dangerous because you are staring down a Rillaboom as a Terra Water Lunala. Not only is it super effective, but you could be faked out right now considering there's no Psychic Terrain. Because the Rillaboom came in on the Indeedee and Rillaboom was able to get the grassy terrain. No Psychic Terrain means no expanding force for Phillip either. And the Indeedee is forced to switch out there into Phillip's own Ogerpon. So it's actually really interesting how we saw in this game how both players led Lunala plus a Dark type, and then they both had their Terrain Setter and a Ogerpon in the back. I just thought that was really interesting as Moonblast comes out there to Phillip, breaking that Shadow Shield.
Yeah, and here comes Moongeist Beam from Phillips Lunala. Not really enough to finish off this Lunala. Is this going to be... Oh, U-Turn. I wasn't sure if this was going to be something like a Moonblast Woodhammer double up on Phillips Lunala, because really one of the downsides of the set that Bizod ran and that Phillip is running now is there's no Protect on it. Without something like Indeedee next to it, you know, setting up Psychic Terrain, going for those redirections, this Lunala is going to be pretty wide open. I think Phillip kind of realizing that he wanted to get Indeedee off the field to reset Psychic Terrain and putting in a different Follow Me Pokemon set, and also give himself the ability to set up a Psychic Terrain by getting the Indeedee back in should he want to. I think Phillip is playing from pretty far behind at this point. The only thing that might be able to get him back into the game is giving himself access to that spread expanding force again.
Yeah, but no Indeedee switch there means Ogerpon is going to get knocked out there by the Ivy Cudgel from Luca's Cornerstone. And Phillips Lunala, as we know, is going to move second to Luca Pause and his Lunala with the Moonblast, firing off the Lunala. Not able to bring it down, though. Phillips Lunala is going to get another special attack drop, and the Trick Room is going to go up for Phillips. So bringing in that Indeedee for free now, getting a Psychic Terrain. That -1 is a little scary, though.
I think the Trick Room and getting Indeedee and Lunala together is just too little too late. Like, there's drops on the board. There is a relatively healthy Rillaboom in the back. I think it would be very tough for Phillip to claw his way back into this game, even if this positioning looks a little bit better in a vacuum. Hell, on Luca's side, we could even just see like things like Follow Me or Spiky Shield or really anything that he wants to stall out some of this Trick Room timing. I think really one of the things that kind of decided the outcome of this game, or is about to decide it, is that Luca's Lunala was using its turns a little bit better. I think on Phillip's side, you know, we can't blame Phillip for missing the Meteor Beam. We can blame Lunala for that. But it led to the Lunala just not doing nearly as much as he wanted to. On Luca's side, it was just one Calm Mind and then attack, attack, attack. That's really what you want with your Restricted. You want to getting uncontested value out. And I think in terms of dealing with that Lunala on Luca's side, Phillip really has to go back to the drawing board, or he could just say he plans on hitting a Meteor Beam this game.
And I think even if you hit Meteor Beam, I think Luca was very okay with that because Incineroar didn't even come out after that. Yes, it got a parting shot out, but after Incineroar got that extra value from the parting shot, the real value was having the train with the Rillaboom and the Cornerstone with the Follow Me and the Ivy Cudgel into the other Ogerpon. But really, the value that Incineroar was able to get out of that turn was the parting shot, so being able to play around that is nice. But if, you know, Incineroar does go down, okay, I just have to deal with a +1 Lunala. And, of course, if Luca's Lunala gets a Moonblast drop, that's, of course, very nice. But you have a +1 special defense to play around, so Luca's probably accepting of the Lunala getting the Meteor Beam off.
One other thing that I want to point out in this set is because both sides have like a lot of Pokemon that are similar to each other. We have 2 Lunalas, 2 Ogerpons, 2 Terrain Setters like Indeedee and Rillaboom happen to naturally share the same base speed stat, so they're 2 Pokemon. You don't really know which of them is going to be going first. I think both players probably learned a lot about the speed order from that game, and now they know exactly where they stand. Maybe on Philip's side, if anything, he now feels more confident that he can go for the Trick Room mode, knowing that a lot of his Pokemon happen to be slower. Also knowing things like, I think we saw Rillaboom happen to be slower than his Lunala. Maybe that's something that he now knows he has to be careful about. I think both players just have even more information now, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with it going into this game. I'm not sure. Do you think we expect to see any of the Pokemon that didn't come to that game? Like, let's say Screamtail's a really unique pick on Luca's team. I'm not sure if this would be the matchup for it, just due to the amount of Follow Me that we have on Philip's side, but it could be a player here.
Yeah, I'm a little scared to bring Screamtail in this scenario. At glance, it can maybe be cool if you get a switch in with the Screamtail into the Lunala. You can kind of encore it into a Meteor Beam. That could be a little cool. But yeah, with double redirection, I don't think it's the best pick. I think all 3 of the other Pokemon are great here. And we're going to see a switch up of leads from Luca and Philip, considering Philip's Roaring Moon got OHKO'd from that Moonblast before. I think leaving it behind, or at least bringing it in the back, is a bit of a better choice. Philip here leading the Urshifu Rapid Strike and Lunala, and Luca leading the Lunala and Ogerpon Cornerstone.
So this Urshifu being on the field already means that, like, Philip has made a change up in his brings, and I have to wonder what it's going to be. I think the Indeedee's a really powerful player here. It'd be weird to see him not bring the Indeedee. Maybe it's the Ogerpon Fire not coming instead of Urshifu, because I also think Roaring Moon is a pretty powerful player. Without that, there's not going to be any chance to go for positive speed control. No way to, like, point something like an Acrobatics at the Rillaboom.
Oh, and no terrestrialization. Luca going for a Power Whip to break that Shadow Shield. Surging Strikes to break Luca's Lunala's Shadow Shield. But because we know Luca's Lunala is faster, if it gets this Moongeist Beam off into Philip's Lunala, this could just be a one-hit knockout and be a huge swing of momentum for Luca. The Moongeist Beam is coming out into Philip's Lunala, and it's going to be a one-hit knockout.
Yeah, that was a really good combo on Luca's side. Oh, and you know, if we think about it, that Lunala, like, without Protect or anything, that feels like a pretty safe double up. It's like, you have to Terra Water, and even then, like, what if Luca had gone for something like a Power Whip instead?
I mean, Power Whip was the move of choice.
Oh, it was
so
Power Whip instead of Ivy Touch.
For it.
Yeah, that was a
covers,
really safe, like, double up to go for that.
And, like, worst case scenario, something like this Ogerpon Fire comes in, but it still has to eat a Moongeist Beam and a Power Whip. So, there, like you said, there is really no safe switch in there, and, like, no Protect, I mean, immediately coming into play for this game, too, for Luca here. And this Lunala took damage from the Surging Strikes, yes, but that's what you have your Ogerpon for now. And with its sturdy, not that it matters against something like the Urshifu, but you could just follow me or switch it out here into something like the Incineroar, which is another great play. Yes, you're switching into an Urshifu, but with something like the Rocky Helmet, making the Urshifu damage itself and getting an Intimidate on the Ogerpon, this is a super well-played position for Luca.
Ooh, what Terra are we seeing on Philip's side here? That is going to be the Urshifu turning into a Stellar type for a little bit of extra damage on this Focus asset, saying, hey, no Mystic Water, have to figure out another way to get my boost. Still, I am really worried about how Philip is going to fare against this Rock Ogerpon. I feel like the fact that the Rock Ogerpon is kind of running the speed here, is getting its calls right. This Power Whip is just absolutely colossal damage. Urshifu is going to go down if this is Surging Strikes point at the Rocky Helmet Incineroar.
Yeah,
let's see where this is going. Oh, he does get that call right. This is pointed at the Ogerpon instead, which means that Urshifu is actually going to live to see the end of the turn.
And this Ogerpon spread, allowing it to live a Terra Stellar. Surging Strikes from this Focus Sash Urshifu, which I believe most Ogerpons are EV to live nowadays. They're all like super bulky.
Yeah, really one of like the funny developments of like late in Regulation G is when everyone decides like, hey, this Pokemon can now do this with an EV spray. Let's try doing that. Let's have our Rock Ogerpons living everything, and kind of makes sense when you're using a Lunala and you really have to make sure that your Ogerpon is staying alive to support it. On Philip's side, we're actually going to see the Fire Ogerpon leaving for Indeedee, getting rid of that Intimidate drop. I think Indeedee really going to have to pull out all the stops to figure out a way to protect this Urshifu throughout the game. I think because of that Rocky Helmet on Incineroar, it's just going to be so tough for this Urshifu to figure out anything to do to get rid of the Ensign.
I mean, Luca's just playing this game perfectly, playing around that Protect, knowing that Phillips' only out is to bring in the Indeedee and follow me and maybe get an attack off with Urshifu next turn to knock out this Cornerstone, but just predicting the Indeedee switch in there. Also, very safe into the Ogre Pawn, considering it just protected the last turn. You're getting so much value regardless of what happens out of that turn. It was just the best play Luca could make, and with a Lunala in the back here, Phillip can't break through this Incineroar with the Rocky Helmet, and this Ogre Pawn that is the fastest thing on the field here and is threatening a one-hit knockout into Phillips' Ogre Pawn. Ivy Cudgel firing out from Luca's into Phillips. Actually misses the KO this time, so it was potentially a roll from last game. As Close Combat fires off into the Incineroar at -1. Is still able to get the knockout, but is going to get itself knocked out with the Rocky Helmet.
Yeah, I guess, like, you know, any attack that we see from the Fire Pond at this point is going to be able to get a knockout on the Rock Pond and turn this game into a 1-on-2 situation. However, the one on Phillips' side is going to be like this red HP Ogre Pond Fire. It's a little bit tough to see it kind of clawing its way back into the game from here.
Yeah, absolutely. With a Pokemon that we haven't even seen revealed yet for Luca and a Lunala, this Ogre Pond is not going to have enough fuel left in the tank, unfortunately, to beat them. But, I mean, it is a Rillaboom, so say it lives a Grassy Glide and is able to get a knockout and miraculously live a Moongeist Beam. With that amount of HP, though, I kind of doubt it. But I think Phil played this game great. I think maybe bringing the Urshifu on lead was a bit, I don't know the word for it, but bringing in the front was left it very susceptible.
Right, I think Phillips' lead here, like not having either of the Follow Me Pokemon, and then on Luca's side, did we see Luca lead the Rock Pond like this in Game 1?
Yeah. No. In Game 1, Luca led Incineroar and
right, so I think the Rock Pond lead is probably something that really caught Phillip off guard there. I have to play. Luca played that game so well. It kind of shows like how bad it is to fall even one step behind in a match against a top player like Luca Paz. They're going to capitalize on it. If you've just used a Protect, that slot is probably eating a double up, and you're about to lose some very valuable resources. It feels like Luca really didn't even have to make any very complicated plays that hurt. He kind of just realized which of Phillips thought he had pressure on, and he took it. And Phillip was unfortunately taking the bait on a lot of those turns too, and not doing anything to keep the play like maybe a little bit more even. He was just getting those slots kind of doubled up on. I'm not sure if he had any successful protects in the second game too, which is like kind of a sign that you're not getting your plays right when you need to. Definitely a tricky matchup for him. I wonder if Phillip were to play that again, maybe we could see the speed control come into play. I really think a Roaring Moon to kind of like make sure that your Pokemon are actually like, so that not everyone is getting outrun by the Rock Pond could be an interesting way to approach things.
Yeah, I thought not bringing the Tailwind. I get it drops to the Moonblast, but I really think you need the speed control to actually have a chance against opposing Lunala, especially when you know it's guaranteed to be faster than you. It's kind of an uphill battle, considering it also it didn't even need a Calm Mind that game. Like there was no time for Luca to set it up, nor did he need the turns. Going for the Moongeist Beam, going for the Power Webs, just going for consistent damage across the board allowed Luca to take that set 2-0.
Yeah, and that's something that, like, is a skill that players really have to have. Knowing when it's okay to lose a Pokemon. Think about, like, a Whimsicott or a Tornadus. Sometimes you'll lose those Pokemon turn 1 or turn 2 of the game, but if they set up Tailwind, you're happy with it if you think you can end the game in that amount of time. Granted, that is going to be tough against a Calm Mind Lunala team to end the game within, like, the 3 or 4 turns that you're really benefiting from that Tailwind, so I definitely can see why Phillip wouldn't have wanted to try and do that there. Overall, just a really well-played game by both players. I think we are going to head to a break very soon. We need to enjoy some lunch and get ready for round 5 for you guys very soon. So I hope you'll stay around and catch us after this break.